March 22nd. Mr. Clerk, the time is 7 p.m. I'd like to call this General Committee meeting to order. We would like to start by acknowledging that the lands on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat people whose presence here continues to this day. Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississauga of the Credits and the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge and thank them for sharing this land with us. A shared understanding of how the rich culture heritage has existed for centuries and of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Humphreys. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? We have no community presentations this evening. We have no delegations. Can I get a motion to receive the items for information? Read the memorandum from Councillor Gardner, Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority Board meeting highlights of January 28th, 2022. Councillor Gardner, Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Advisory Committee minutes. Can I get a motion to receive the Advisory Committee minutes of items 8.1 and 8.2? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Humphreys. Any comments or questions? I see move. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We move to the regular agenda, items 9.1 to 9.5. In front of me. 9.1. Yep. Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just before we continue, I just want to acknowledge former Councillor Jeff Tom, who's here today. He came out and graced us with his presence. And so just wanted to welcome him back into the chamber and say thanks for coming by. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. 9.1 CS 22-018 short-term rental bylaw. Could I get a motion to approve the recommendation? Put it on the floor. Marakis, is there a second? Councillor Kim, any comments or questions? Oh, there. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, just a little bit of background on how we determine the appropriateness of the fees, both the initial fee of the $5,000 and then the ongoing license fee of $400 a month. Just some history of how we determine those to be the correct numbers.
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the $5,000 is a one-time fee for Airbnb and Expedia and Vrbo, those companies who list these properties, and the annual fee is for the operator who owns the property. And we did a scan of other municipalities and what they're charging, and this is consistent with other municipalities, City of Toronto, Town of Newmarket, and many others.
Thompson.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up question, with regards to the demerit point system, I guess, I'm fine with it in principle as a whole. The only one that I don't personally agree with is where it says they were operating while their business license is suspended or revoked. It's a 7-point demerit. Why wouldn't it just be, they don't get their license again, or it'd be that full 15 points or however the system is? I just think that we're only penalizing them somewhat for knowingly operating when their license is suspended or revoked. And I just think that that's, to me, unacceptable. So through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, perhaps you can give some context as to why, you know, we're not permanently revoking their license if they choose to continue to do it without one, as opposed to just 7 demerit points.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ray is on this call as well as in this meeting. And so since he determined the demerit points, I'm going to ask that perhaps he can respond to the question. Thank you.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the intent is that if we were already at a stage where the license was being revoked, it would have to go before the Aurora Appeals Tribunal. So at this point, it would be an accumulative demerit point in addition to them already reaching their threshold. So it's something that we could consider adjusting once we finalize the final version of the bylaw. But essentially, they would already be at the Aurora Appeals Tribunal at this point to revoke their license because they would be entitled to a hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. And I understand that, but here we are saying that, okay, we've revoked your license, or we're in the process of revoking your license, and we're going to hit you with a further penalty of 7 demerit points. To me, that's not a stiff enough fine or consequence for knowingly continuing to operate outside of the rules that are posted. And so to me, it's, you know, once bitten, twice shy. And so put a 2-strike rule in, and if we've revoked their license and they choose to keep going, then don't give them a license again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. A few of those questions were answered for me that I had that were similar. As far as the power of entry part of it, if I could get a little bit more information on what that constitutes. I'm just a little bit concerned about, you know, the context and how that's interpreted. You know, somebody could have some music in there, or maybe they're suspected they've been seen to have more than 6 people in the house. And does that mean that the officer has the authority to decide that they're just going to come on your property or come into the house to kind of make this citation or observation on whether or not they're complying?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Power of entry are standard provisions that are in every bylaw. So there is some regulatory regime to the powers of entry. So this would allow us to enter onto the property, not necessarily into the unit itself, unless there was a court order that was issued under Section 431 of the Municipal Act, or we had, or we had authority to enter by the occupants.
Okay, thank you. I understand we do have a new power of entry bylaw, which is great. And just the way I had read it in the context of if any of these particular bylaws were suspected to be broken, it would give the authority of that person to have power of entry. And so the context of what they were allowed to do was unclear to me, whether it's going into a house and making an observation. It could be, oh, they have 4 bedrooms, not 3. I just don't understand that context. So can you just maybe clarify that a little bit, that language?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the power of entry onto the lands is what's permitted. So to perhaps gain entry into the rear yard if there is some partying happening in the yard itself, but the entry into the unit there would be some restrictions. And we do have a standard operating procedure for power of entry. It's not necessarily a bylaw, but our bylaws do contain this standard wording, which is recommended by our prosecutor and follows regulatory regime.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just in retrospect with how this system or bylaw came to be, I know you said you took some examples of other municipalities through you, Mr. Chair, apologize earlier, to Ms. Van Leeuwen. Was this policy really derived maybe from a major metropolitan city like Toronto? And I'm only asking because just reading through the bylaw, it's that rather vast. And in some instances, it seems a little egregious for a town that doesn't even have a short-term rental issue at this time. I know we're trying to be proactive, but I'm just curious as to if the body of this main thing came from a big city versus, say, a small town like us.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This bylaw is very similar to the town of Newmarket's bylaw, and we have been working with them because they did implement a short-term rental bylaw within the last few years. And we have ongoing conversations because we often partner with them. And so this is very similar to their bylaw and other bylaws as well that exist. So this is best practice.
Thank you. And through Mr. Chair to Ms. Van Leeuwen, have they found that this bylaw to be successful for what they're trying to achieve, or they had any complaints about it? Has there been any issues? Was that something that was discussed?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I know the town of Newmarket has had success with their bylaw. And like I said, this is very similar to their bylaw. But perhaps Mr. Ray would like to add some comments.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. From my understanding in consultation with the town of Newmarket, it has been successful. And just to answer your previous question as well, the bylaw was drafted largely based on the town of Newmarket and Blue Mountains. And we also attended and engaged with the town of Newmarket for public feedback from stakeholders when drafting this bylaw. So the success thus far has been positive. The way it's written has not resulted in many hurdles for them and has seen a general level of strong compliance.
Thank you very much. And just one last question, and maybe I just didn't understand it clearly. The dollar per booking room, is that something that's being paid to the town? I'm just not quite sure what that meant.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That would be, yes, we would receive $1 for every night that is booked through an Airbnb or Vrbo or those companies that, that advertise these rentals.
Thank you. And through Mr. Chair, is that just for specifically just so you have an idea of when it's being booked, so you can, for tracking purposes, so you can understand when it's actually being followed? Is that kind of the intention of this collaboration for the dollar per room? Is that what we're trying to achieve?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and that's why the host compliance monitoring system will assist us as well, because they will do a scan of how many units are being rented through all of these various platforms. And we will be able to track that information and have that data available to us.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Kim and then Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By and large, I'm in agreement, and I am for the staff recommendation. My first question regarding the licenses, I don't recall seeing any quota or a maximum number of licenses being given out. I can't imagine theoretically every resident being able to do a short-term rental. So can you clarify whether there is a maximum or is really there's no limit?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't put a maximum number of short-term rentals in this bylaw. Once it's enacted, we will continue to monitor and have a better understanding going forward, particularly with the compliance monitoring system that will advise us of the number of units available in the town of Aurora.
Thank you. And as long as staff is aware that, we're treating this as a living document where we are going to have to tinker with this, as the short-term rental business evolves, and who knows what we're going to bring into Aurora down the road. Certain neighborhoods may be more amenable to short-term rentals than others, so we certainly have to continue to monitor that. To you, Mr. Chair, my next question is regarding the Aurora Appeals Tribunal. Should anything goes to the tribunal for appeals, what kind of time frame are we looking at for someone to appeal or to have some kind of a resolution to an issue?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So once there's a notice of refusal or denial for a license, or we're revoking, suspending, there's a 30-day period to which they submit their request for a hearing with the tribunal. And then it'll depend on just scheduling the next meeting.
Okay.
And this is very similar to other licenses that go through a similar process under our licensing bylaw, and animal control as well has a provision that if we issue an order to muzzle, that they can appeal that to the appeals tribunal.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So is it reasonable to assume that within 3 months, an appeal process can come full circle with a response?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I believe that is reasonable too.
Okay, and great. And something like this, right now, I don't think we have to worry about short-term rentals greatly because aside from, a couple of large events, we don't have, we don't have a sporting team like a Maple Leafs or the Raptors. So I don't think it's a big concern, but do we have the staffing currently to deal with, these permitting issues and doing on-site visits? So for the next year or two, we're okay with staffing to monitor this?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and that is one of the reasons that we're recommending the host compliance monitoring system, because that will track all complaints that have been submitted, and we'll have a better understanding of the number of short-term rentals in Aurora. And so we do believe that that monitoring system will definitely help with respect to resources.
Certainly. And, that will help monitor, who is running an STR, but certainly there's going to be human relationships involved when it comes to dealing with people who are not running their business according to our bylaws. So as long as staff is monitoring that. And my last question is, regarding the $1 a day, I can't imagine that being more than a few $100s if that, if we're going to bother charging that per day fee, why not $5 or $10, something more significant than a small token amount like $1?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Maybe Alex can respond to this as again, I guess he's been working with other municipalities and doing that environmental scan.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So the $1 per night per room booking fee is estimated based on current volumes to bring in potentially north of $10,000 to $15,000 annually, based on our current numbers, which are currently lower than they were pre-pandemic. So it is expected that there will be some growth in this area. This is also a consistent approach to what is being used in the towns of Newmarket and other tourist destination spots, excluding the city of Toronto within the province of Ontario.
Mr. Kim?
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff, for bringing this. And, we've been looking at this for the last, 2-3 years. So I'm glad that we're voting on this this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank staff for bringing this. It's been a concern for a while. With respect to posting a sign to identify the unit as licensed by the town, if a person has a complaint, is the information going to be on the sign as to where they call? Or how will we get that information to the people who are renting or the neighbors?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's my understanding. We'll be issuing a placard to be posted, and it will have that information as well as the number for the host compliance company So which has a 24/7 service to submit your complaints. So that information will be on the placard.
Thank you. So conceivably, a person would have to go onto that property to be able to read that number. I mean, that could be considered trespassing.
Ms. Van Leeuwen, or
Through you, Mr. Chair, the placard has to be placed in a conspicuous location so that it is not necessary, like not in the rear yard. It's going to have to be visible so that people have that opportunity. We can also include some information on our website in terms of who to contact and
Great.
that information.
Thank you. That sounds good. So the person who's administering all of this is the director or manager, and they're in charge of enforcing. It sounds to me like it's going to be a lot of work, a lot of extra work. So this isn't the kind of service where it pays for itself, I'm guessing.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are expecting an revenue to be generated through this licensing regime. And currently because we don't have it in place, we are receiving complaints and issues with respect to short-term rentals and having to respond, but we don't have any revenue associated with those. So we're just trying to ensure compliance with all town bylaws and that impacts to the community are limited or not negative.
Thank you. The director or manager also is prescribing the content and form of the licenses and any documents under this bylaw. Is this something that council will be seeing before it's actually instated?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, are you asking if the bylaw will come before?
Well, the forms and documents that are going to be required under this bylaw, is council going to have knowledge of what they say?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks for the clarification. We're not planning on bringing that forward because our applications are typically pretty standard in terms of the information, the property owner, contact information, and we do this for various permits and licenses and other approvals.
Thank you. So when it says documents required, what kind of documents would that be? Just what you've said now, or is it going to be more extensive?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have all of that information with me right now because we haven't established the application process yet. But it typically would just be property owner information, location. We're going to require a zoning clearance letter from the buildings department to state that it is a permitted use. We're going to floor plans of the bed, how many bedrooms, that type of information.
Thank you. And before the whoever is renting this out gets their license, it does say they have to comply with the Fire Prevention and Prevention Act. So is that going to be something that we inspect the property to make sure that it is up to fire code?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. Public health and safety is #1 priority.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. The last question actually goes back to the demerit points. If somebody fails to post their license in an accessible place, to me that's showing bad faith, and it would be, I think the demerit points are 5 that we're giving. Let me just see. Oh no, it's 3. So I I think that contravention requires a higher point, demerit point, because it just goes in the face of the bylaw. I'd just like a comment from you on that.
Ms. Van Nguyen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly review the demerit points and make adjustments.
Do you agree with my concern, or do you agree with my concern?
Ms. Van Nguyen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do understand your concern, yes.
Okay, good enough, Ms. Van Nguyen. Thank you to you both for the work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, unless anyone for the first time wants to speak. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen again, just going back to the signage. So the bylaw speaks to the signage being posted in a format as specified by the manager. And thank you for clarifying that it'll be a placard. And that it also needs to conform with the town's sign bylaw. But when I look at the sign bylaw, you know, there's still not a lot of direction with regards to it. And so I think I'd like to see in the bylaw a little bit more details around the signage. I mean, are we contemplating it to be like a real estate sign where it's sort of hanging off of some post at the front of the person's property? Is it more going to be like some sort of a heritage plaque that's on the face of the building? I just think there needs to be some sort of standardization and maybe some more details around it. You know, I certainly would encourage people that have issues to go to the town's website for all of the details as opposed to going onto somebody's property for sure. But I think that just the way it's written right now, it's still a little bit vague, especially where the signage needs to be posted to be able to address some of the concerns that others have raised as well. And perhaps as we continue to refine the bylaw, that could be spelled out a little bit more. Thank you. That's just my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gardner.
Going back to the demerit points, there is a requirement to respond pretty quickly to any complaints. And if they don't, that's only a 5 demerit points. Again, I think that's a pretty crucial point. So if you could just think on that again. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I just have a few. Regarding the, I'm sorry if I missed it, the $5,000. What does, I mean, is it in line with what Toronto does? I'm just trying to get a sense of, it seems like a large amount. And if it's not an Airbnb or some of the others, and someone wants to, even an Airbnb, it's someone's home, they sign up with Airbnb and they, you know, when they're away, they lease their house out or whatever it is, accommodation. Ultimately, that cost goes on to that particular property owner. And I'm just wondering if there's any data that helps me understand why such a high fee. Ms. Van Nguyen.
To you, Mr. Chair, I do believe it is consistent with surrounding municipalities. And perhaps Mr. Ray would like to respond to this question, because I know that he's done the research and collected that data and information.
Mr. Ray.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So the $5,000 fee is consistent with municipalities like Newmarket and northern municipalities that typically have tourism sectors. Toronto's fee is not the same as this. Their structure of fees and their bylaw is structured significantly different. It is a one-time fee. So when a company like Airbnb or Vrbo initially signs up, that would be the initial fee, and that helps with the setup and administration to prepare for managing the process with that company. And then from that point forward, on an annual basis, the only fees we would collect from those respective companies would be the $1 per night per room fee, which is relatively nominal.
And just to follow up on that, so other than Blue Mountain and Newmarket and potentially us, who else, first of all, has this type of bylaw and their licensing fee?
So thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So other than us, Newmarket and Blue Mountain, the fees do vary, but they're all relatively similar. The city of Vaughan has a short-term rental bylaw. The town of Richard Stouffville is bringing forth a bylaw shortly, which will propose very similar things. The town of Georgina has a short-term rental bylaw specifically to deal with a lot of the issues around the lake, and their fee structure does vary a little bit, but is relatively similar once it's all completed together.
Okay, maybe before council, maybe a breakdown of those municipalities and their fees would be helpful to me. The other fee, the $400, I believe, I think it's per year licensing fee. I noticed, I read through Newmarket's, and it's almost verbatim. The bylaws almost verbatim as Newmarket's is. There's some differences, but they break down that fee based on bedrooms. I think 2 bedrooms is 100, or 1 bedroom is 200, 2 bedrooms is 300, and 3 bedrooms is 400, something like that. Is there a reason why we're not doing that?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So we decided to take a simpler approach and keep our fee structure simple and to offset the costs of the potential host compliance monitoring system. Our fees are worked into that. So overall, once those potential costs are deducted out, our fee structure is actually less than comparable to the town of Newmarket. And as I indicated, just for simplicity.
Okay, and just the last one. Did we reach out to any of these companies and just see if there's any feedback, them looking at this and specifically in Aurora, whether or not they have any issues, or at least the ones that are operating now and the homeowners, the property owners, are they aware that this is coming, and have we had any feedback if we've reached out to them?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, just a point of clarification. The companies, the short-term rental companies or the host monitoring companies?
Sorry, what's the difference between the two?
Okay, so the host monitoring companies are a type of platform or software that allows us to monitor overall compliance and license administration for short-term rentals. And then the host companies would be a company like Airbnb, Expedia, Vrbo.
So the host companies, the Airbnbs, because ultimately they'd be hit with the fees.
Thank you. So through you, the conversations, the town participated in the town of Newmarket's public consultations back prior to the onset of the pandemic. And the feedback was taken from those meetings to help develop those bylaws. Early in 2020, the town did reach out to a couple of the short-term rental companies and had preliminary conversations indicating that we would be bringing this bylaw forward. And they were in support with, some proposed changes, but there was communication that was had, yes.
Okay, thank you. Bit on the fence with this one, but I'll think about it a little more. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 9.2 facility naming rights, Aurora Sports Dome. Can I get a motion to put this on the floor, please? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gilliland, any comments or questions? I have Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. In principle, I support the idea of, exploring that possibility and then coming back to council for approvals. However, what I would like to see, in addition to what's before us, is perhaps at our next closed session next week, or whatever, that the conversation take place between council and staff so that we can provide them a little direction, perhaps some parameters on what our expectations would be in terms of a financial return I just think that we need to provide staff with some context before they have that conversation, because I would certainly not want to be in a situation where staff have negotiated something in good faith and come back and it's not of the expectation of council, and it's not successful in that sense, because you can't really go back at that point. I'd rather have the conversation first at the next possible opportunity in closed session, just to provide what our thoughts are around this in terms of what our expectation is, so that at least when they go out and have these negotiations or conversations, that they know what, may be acceptable to council as a whole. So, I'm certainly happy to hear what my colleagues say around the table, but like I said, I'm supportive of it in principle, and I'd like to add that as an amendment after everybody's had a chance to weigh in.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. I totally support exactly what you're saying. I was going to raise the same thing. And especially in specific, my comments were going to be, deciding, again, the rules of engagement. When it comes to naming rights, I'm all for it. But, for me, I'd like to see some reoccurring revenue. And I think these are some of the conversations that we could have in closed session. So I'll support that if no one else around the table has any comments. The one last thing I think I wanted to ask in respect to that was, okay, I'm going to save it for later. That's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I had a similar concern, and I would like to see it come back into closed session next week.
Okay, any other comments? Amendment? Councillor Thompson?
Perhaps since we were talking about closed session, perhaps the clerk could provide some direction, but the intent really is for council and staff to have a conversation regarding this item in closed session to determine what reasonable expectation or value that we're looking for. And so perhaps the clerk can wordsmith it, but that's the intent of it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's we will have to wordsmith it, because I think right now, without being in negotiations with a particular entity, we don't have a closed session exemption to go in and speak about something that would turn out to be sort of a policy of council, or without a identifiable individual as part of these things. So at the moment, I'm struggling with an exemption for council to go into closed session for that specific subject, but it's something I could think about further for sure.
Well, I think we are providing, parameters around the negotiation of a deal. We're setting some targets, so to speak. And so it wouldn't be appropriate to have that in open session because it's related to the negotiation of a proposed deal. And so we're just setting whatever the floor or the parameters are. And so I still believe it qualifies for closed session, but you're right. Trying to figure out the proper amendment on the fly is a little difficult. But that's the intent. And I think, I think it's important for all of council to be able to have an opportunity to voice what their expectation is in this instance.
So I think we all probably agree, maybe between now and council, we can figure out how to make that happen. Any other comments, Councillor Gunner? I see your hand up. I'm not sure if.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's now going down.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor? I think, yeah. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 9.3 SARC Pool Project Grant. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Kim, seconder. Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be careful how I say this because I'm not really sure how to address it, but it was Aurora's choice, I believe, to drain the pools. Question to staff.
was it our choice to drain the pool? Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly it's our choice. We were not directed to have to close or drain a pool during the closure. We have done that in the past for some maintenance, but we have held water in the tank to, obviously we don't want to waste water, just empty it if we have to. So preferably we leave it in. In this case, during the COVID closure, we didn't know how long it would be. We anticipated it was going to be a significant period of time, so we did drain it. So it was our choice, but that being said, it was COVID driven for our decision to do so.
Mr. Gardner.
Thanks. I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Kim. Mike.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. McDougall, when we had DEI come in to do the initial inspection and subsequently put out a tender, was there a fee for DEI coming in to investigate, or did they investigate in hopes that they would have, some kind of a lead in terms of understanding the situation when it comes to tender?
Ms. McDougall.
Actually, through you, Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Bertrand is on the line. He was involved in that process, so I wouldn't mind if you were to address him.
Mr. Bertrand.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. DEI is a consulting firm. They don't do repairs and maintenance. So we brought them in purely as a consultant to help us determine the nature of the problems and to help us to put the tender together.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, approximately what would the fee be for a general inspection like that?
Their fees, through you, Mr. Chair, were under 10,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Let's see, Councillor Gardner. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Thank you. No, I didn't have anything further. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 9.4 Town of Aurora Emergency Management Program Council Budget Authority increase. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Kim, Councillor Humphreys, comments or questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Am I remembering correctly? I guess this would be to Rachel Wainwright Van Kessel. Am I remembering that we decided in last year's budget to reduce our emergency reserve?
Mr. Gardner.
Through you, Mr. Chair, which emergency reserve are you thinking of, Councillor?
Hello, Mr. Gardner.
Hi.
It seems to me that in one of the budgets, we just decided that we wouldn't need this money put away for circumstances such as this. You know what? I can take this offline. I just think we might have been short-sighted if that is what we did. I'll speak to you offline, Mr. Gardner.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair, to I guess Mr. Natarozny. I'm just trying to understand the name change or the bracket in which the funding's being requested, changing it from emergency response plan to business continuity management program. And I was wondering what the difference was between the two, because I feel like they're two different things.
Mr. Natarozny.
To you, Mr. Chair. The name changes because we're extending beyond just simple business continuity in the situation where there's an interruption like an outage or a major emergency. And we're bringing in tools for staff to do business planning along the whole spectrum, which will feed then the business continuity plan when we do have an emergency or some other interruption of service. So it's more comprehensive, but it includes all the work of the emergency business continuity approach.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, if I may, recognizing that perhaps we need some more work in that area for business continuity or town operations or whatnot. In respect to the emergency preparedness, is that suggesting that we don't have any more work to do with their emergency preparedness plan? Because I seem to recall that was something that I thought we were going to revise and work on as well.
Mr. Natarosny?
To you, Mr. Chair, no, exactly. We do have more, absolutely we have more work to do on that plan, but we want to do it sort of holistically with sort of all of the business processes in mind, as opposed to just focusing on it, continuity from the perspective of an emergency. So it basically the emergency plan will be a subset of the broader plan.
Okay, so if I may, is the master plan now called the business continuity plan, or are we having a separate emergency preparedness plan? Because I think both documents serve a different purpose, and I just don't want that to get lost in translation.
Mr. Natarosny?
So you, Mr. Chair, sorry. I'm not sure if I understand the question, but the business continuity could be from something like for example, an IT failure that may not be part of an emergency response plan, which is maybe weather or some other event. So all these plans will exist and they're all related to each other. So it's not that one replaces the other, or we need them both. We need something to respond to emergencies, but we also need business continuity, which could be called upon in an emergency or could be called upon just in our day-to-day with something that happens and causes us to need to go into that kind of business continuity mode.
Okay, I understand what you're saying as far as the emergency plan and update and continuation of the operations plan, and I understand that, and I understand the business continuity management of that. And there are plans out there that reflect that, and there's a purpose, and I totally support that. I just want to ensure that because we're doing this name change, I just want to ensure that we do have a generalized emergency response plan, because it's not necessarily all about town operations, but it's also about the safety of the public and, and harm of the community. So is that a separate plan from this, or was that already included in that? I just want to make sure we're not excluding that part of that by renaming it, or was it all in the same bucket, or do we have two separate documents? I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
Mr. Natarosny?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they are two separate documents and they will be maintained as such.
Thank you.
Is that it? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Natarosny. It just wasn't clear to me when I was reading through the report who's doing the work, and from a procurement perspective, how it's all unfolding. So in the background section, it talks about in the fall of 2021, an RFP was issued to obtain a consultant to review and develop a robust business continuity management program. At the same time, we applied for a grant. We were successful in the grant, and so that expanded the scope of work to include more things, specifically performance measures. And then I skip down to the next page, and it talks about that those deliverables will be facilitated by a vetted and industry-leading performance management consulting firm. So is this the same firm that was successful in the RFP, or are we bringing on a different firm to do that portion of it? And if so, was that a single source, or how was that firm chosen? I just want to understand who's doing the work and how the consultants were determined.
Mr. Natarosny?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll ask Ms. Van Leeuwen to comment on the procurement process and who's doing the work.
Ms. Van Leeuwen? Microphone.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The business continuity management is in the final procurement stage. So we're just working with the successful proponent on finalizing the agreements. With respect to the performance management and performance measures plan, we have engaged with a consultant who is we've had one facilitated workshop with him. He's very engaged. He has done a number of similar projects for other municipalities, such as Vaughan, I think New York City, region of Peel. He's very knowledgeable, and he has provided us with a proposal. And since he is already familiar with our environment and has worked with our executive leadership team and senior management team, we are planning to continue to work with him.
So if I follow correctly then, so we sent out an RFP with a set budget. We were successful in the grants and we expanded the scope. The proponent that will be successful in the RFP will do phase one or one portion of it. And due to the grant, the additional dollars, we've gone out and single sourced this company or this consultant who by the sounds of it, certainly has lots of experience as you put in the report. Is that correct?
Through
Ms.
you,
Van
Mr. Chair, that's correct. That is our game plan if we receive approval.
And I believe as we've updated and modernized our procurement rules, it falls within the director's ability to make that decision, correct?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it falls maybe on the CAO's authority.
Mr. CEO?
We'll make sure.
Mike,
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'll make sure that we have the proper authority, but I think Ms. Van Leeuwen might be right. It might come to me.
Thanks. Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you to you, Mr. Chair. And no, I appreciate the comments. Some of them have already been asked, but I guess just to our experience of this last pandemic, business continuity management plan, just looking at potential improvements, I guess just through you, Mr. Chair, to, I don't know, Mr. CEO, or have we learned on our own what our gaps are? Do we necessarily need to do more consultation? I think we just lived through 2 years of substantial disruption, and I think the town did an incredible job. It sounds like some IT work that I think is already in the mix. You want to make sure that we have the redundancy built in and continuous business management, absolutely. But we've got a grant. I think it's great. It looks like we have already determined what the consultant is. Just through you, Mr. Chair, I guess the value of this. I mean, it's very important, absolutely. But I think our town says maybe you've done such a good job that I'm not sure if we need to go all out. Just any comments from your perspective? Any risks that I'm maybe not pulling out of the report right now that might make me say, no, we got to move forward for this?
Mr. Natarata?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's many other aspects, for example, of business continuity for sure, that we haven't tested with the pandemic. So catastrophic IT interruptions, things like that would affect, perhaps our ability to generate revenues, to get tax bills out, those kinds of things. So that's just one example of a kind of occurrence that we'd want to have a continuity plan for. So I'm confident there's a lot more work to do in this area. In fact, I think this is an area where you're never finished, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
But I think there's a significant gap to bring us up to what I would call today's standard for a municipality.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. And I get it. Absolutely. From our IT strategy plan that's moving forward and this business continuity plan, do you find there's a lot of overlap there? Or is that we're noticing that there's probably the IT plans going along, doing a great job, but are we looking at catastrophic situations where, if this building isn't here, what are we going to do to continue to move the business forward? Is that why we're here? Sorry,
Mr. Natarata?
To you, Mr. Chair, there's elements of both in that type of planning. I mean, as we saw when we brought the IT strategic plan forward, there's a number of things we needed to do from an infrastructure perspective and from a software implementation perspective, just to get the maximum use and utility out of the tools we already have, and some areas where we're relying on old technology that really should have been enhanced. So what we're trying to do is, while we advance the IT strategic plan and bring those things, make them modern, we're also trying to apply a lens of business continuity and making sure that we don't have one server in one corner running that application, and that we have a fallback plan should something happen physically to that area or to the infrastructure that connects them. So they crisscross back and forth, I'm sure, every day in the IT department. I don't sit in on those meetings,
No,
but I'm quite sure the conversations, as we move forward with strategic plan, often end up being discussions about business continuity as well.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. And Thank you. That's great. Perfect. And I guess we got a grant, which is fantastic. I think it helps. Absolutely. So perfect. No, thank you. Thanks for the answers.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I don't see Councillor Gardner, so I have one. And I apologize if I'm not following the bouncing ball in terms of the numbers, but I'll read the second recommendation. It says that an increase of 103,200, resulting in a total revised capital budget authority of 183,200 for project number 13011, to be funded by 35,200 in previously approved studies and other funding, and 150,000 grant from the municipal modernization program to be approved. I'm just trying to understand. Some of those don't add up to me, and I'm not. I guess I'm not getting it. I get that we're increasing it by 103,200. There was 183,200 previously approved. Are we subtracting the 150,000 from a total budget if that's a grant? And I'm not sure who to address this question to. Ms. Van Leeuwen?
To you, Mr. Chair. So the original capital budget was for 80,000, and we have spent to date 35,200. So under the financial implications, there is a breakdown of the numbers, and which includes that the expenditures to date, and then the business continuity management plan and the performance measures project, which altogether equates to 183,200. So that's where the 103,200 increase in capital budget authority is in the recommendation. Because currently we only have the authority to spend $80,000.
And where is the grant, the 150,000?
So that is that will be put towards the business continuity management plan. Estimated cost is 60,000, and the performance measures project estimated cost is 90,000. So the remaining funds after the initial spend of 33,200 from the 80,000 will be returned to the reserve.
So some 47,000 would be left out of the 80 some odd thousand. We spent 33.
Yeah, 46,800.
And the 90 and the 60 is paid for by the grant.
Correct.
And so just indulge me with the increase of the 103,000. How do we get to that?
To you, Mr. Chair, because the initial project capital budget authority was 80,000. So if you subtract what's already spent and then add the 150 on, it's to increase the capital budget authority, which council only has that authority to do for the capital project.
Okay, I'm still not following, but I'll reach out offline. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. 9.5, statement of remuneration and expenses for members of council committees and local boards. Could I get a motion to put that on the floor, please? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gilliland, comments or questions? We want to get out of here before 8. Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. All right. Notices of motion, 10, sorry. Yeah, notices of motion. So that'll be discussed at council. I know there's a potential amendment. I don't know if, Mr. Clerk, if we can address it now or if it's better to deal with it at council. Okay. Sure.
To you, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be better to deal with that council, whether it's put on the floor like that or through an amendment while it's on the floor.
Okay, we'll do that. Regional Council, could I get a motion to receive the report for information? Mayor Maracus, second. Councillor Kim, comments or questions? Mayor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to just bring up one, and I'm sure that you're all already aware, but the report is coming to us at this meeting. So I figure I'd just update everyone and let the public know as well, in case they haven't heard. The Regional Council did approve the motion calling on the provincial government to dissolve the OLT. It passed 20-1. We had a very lively discussion. And so they've joined the growing list of municipalities that are requesting this of the government, and we'll see how that goes. I know that Vaughan Council, I'll just add that in. I know it's not about the regional report, but this just came up. Vaughan Council passed that as well today. So.
Okay, thank you. It's good news. Any other Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Mayor Maracus, you may not know the answer to this. Perhaps you can come back to it. Within the regional report, it talks about the financial impacts of York Region's COVID-19 response, total 238 million. Senior government funding offset approximately 3/4 or 180 million. I'm just curious, that leaves a shortfall of $58 million. How is that mitigated? And if you don't know the answer off the top of your head, if you could just get back, I'm just wondering, was it a shortfall or did they find other ways? What happened?
Mr. Councilor, Mayor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Thompson. I will get back to you with that added information. But I know that we're looking at many ways at mitigating those shortfalls, but also we're in discussions, obviously, with the provincial government to ask for some extra funding. And I know all the municipalities right across the province are looking for some extra funding for a lot of shortfalls, especially the upper tier and the single tier municipalities, because of the transit and the healthcare that they have to deal with.
Any other comments or questions regarding the regional report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Gillen.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, there was just one comment that I want to make, and there was some new rules that were enacted in York Region about dog walking in the York Regional Forests. They have made some new amendments effective May 1st, 2022. There's a couple of trails that will be designated for dogs to be able to walk off leash. Unfortunately, they're rather far away from Aurora, so expect at least a 25-minute drive. Can't say I'm 100% in support of how it ended up, because I believe that the survey was done during the height of the pandemic when there were so many people walking in the forests. May not necessarily be doing the same activities as of now, and may have a skewed, I guess, process in the survey. I had done the survey. I found some of the questions not necessarily leading in the direction that I felt was clear. And I wish that there was a little just more research done, and maybe allowing a little bit more of the off leash in at least some tracks that are a little closer to Aurora residents. These are quite far. While I agree that some should be completely on leash versus off leash, absolutely, I get that. But I do feel that there is a bit of a lack of places for people to walk their dogs, whether it's in a trail safely, in a controlled manner, or even just dog parks. We're definitely lacking dog parks in our town as it is. And I'm sure many of you know someone who's gotten a puppy during this time, as I call them, COVID puppies, and socialization and exercise are key. And I just wanted to bring it to attention so other people are aware that these changes are made, and to make sure that they are following the rules. One of them is the East Gwillimbury and Davis Drive track in a town of Whitchurch, Stouffville, called Bender's Grave track. The other one being, Davis track. So those are the two. Just kind of throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No. Regional reports. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you. New business. Why don't we start with you, Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no new business.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, walking around, now that the warm weather's come and the snow is melting, walking around in my neighborhood, I see actually, a half dozen homes at least that still have Christmas trees. And so just the way that it went this year, people put their Christmas trees out by the curb, and then we got hit with the big snow and they really got buried. And so now that the snow is melting, they're all popping up. And I guess the question then is, if residents are asking, will those Christmas trees get picked up, or do they need to do something to them to be able to dispose of them?
Mr. Downey.
So thank you and good evening. So through you, Mr. Chair, if those residents could contact us, we could more than likely pick up those trees. GFL has difficulty having that mixed in with the garbage. So if they are having some concerns, perhaps they put them out late, maybe they were buried, might be a variety of different reasons. But if they wish to contact the town, I'm sure we could help out with the removal of the trees.
Thank you.
Mayor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have one this morning. I believe it was this morning. Was it this morning? The Pandemic Recovery Working Group. Yes, they've decided to take a pause. They are going to discontinue getting together and discussing moving forward. Obviously, we're hopefully on our way out of the pandemic, and if things do arise, ELT will be able to have those discussions and look at how we can move forward on certain things. But I did want to commend, obviously, Ms. McDougall for her leadership in leading that group and going through many of the things that we've had to go through over the last 2 years, as well as staff, and obviously working with the region and Central York Fire. They've done a tremendous job through closures, openings, provincial announcements, regional instructions, mandates, everything. They've done a tremendous job to make sure that our municipality, our community, our residents, our businesses, everyone has been able to withstand the last 2 years and get through this. And so I wanted to thank Ms. McDougall for that leadership and all the staff for their hard work over the last 2 years in this working group. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Humphreys. New business.
Yeah, I just wanted to two things. One, it's new business because staff helped very much. So we had a walk, local resident arranged a walk for Ukraine, support of Ukraine, what's happening there. I just wanted to thank staff. Is within a minute. They're helping us with bylaw, clearing up areas for the walk to be safely held, and also having a microphone at Town Park at the band shell within literally a moment's notice. It was arranged, I think, Wednesday. The walk was on Sunday. It was really well attended. But again, thanks to staff, like, when there's an issue, the response is incredible. And I just want to thank you very much. It helped the residents very much. And it was just a peaceful way to show support and solidarity for sure. The other comment I was going to ask is, I think Councillor Gilliland just talked a little bit about, dog walking. So I believe there's a motion that I sent up way before the COVID, I believe, to look at some trails that we could make potentially leashless dog walks. It's been a long time. I can't remember now, but if someone can take a look at that, where that's at, I'm sure it wasn't a priority over COVID. But it was an opportunity where absolutely you don't want to make every place, leashless dog walking trails, but there's an opportunity maybe to make some designated, maybe certain hours a day, and give a little bit more flexibility for some owners to walk those dogs. So I'd love to know where that's at. It'd be great. And last but not least, I did leave a message, and it's my fault I haven't followed up, but it's March, and we do have the our initiative with food sovereignty and ensuring that we have a program in terms of learning how to garden at home and garden in a box. So I will follow up with staff on that, but if someone could provide an update when that report's coming back to council, that'd be great. Again, with COVID and everything else, not a top priority, but if that can be looked at because spring is here. So we should hopefully have a plan for that soon and marketing and in that information. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gilda.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for asking for that update, because I know that that motion was brought forward and it's been a while and it's something that we need to review. So yeah, I'm interested in that too. I'm in conversations with the resident right now about this upcoming, I guess, response to that. So I appreciate that. I guess through you, Mr. Chair, to yourself, I know that we had just dealt with the item on the floor, but the naming rights. I just want a little bit of clarity about the amendment that we never really amended. So I just want to make it clear, just for the public, and I know Michael Thompson had asked as well. Are we waiting until council to get a fulsome understanding of what that amendment would look like through the clerk, or what was the intent there?
I believe so. I believe he's going to look at how to get that into closed session so that we can address it. But Mr. Clerk, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff have discussed it just through our channels here, and we could get that into closed session for next. Well, we can get into closed session. I'll leave it up to Ms. McDougall whether it can be next week, but we can definitely get it into closed session.
Thank you. And is that something that we need to put as an amendment at council next week in order to make sure, or is this something that we're okay? We don't need to have that written in there. So I just want to make sure that it's clear.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we're good with no direction. Staff are working on it right now.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess we will know before we vote on that motion at council, whether we're going to have the discussion in camera or not. Yeah, it'll happen before that moves forward.
Okay.
Councillor Thompson.
My apologies. I just
Sorry,
had
were you
one.
done? Okay.
My apologies. I just have one more. I think it qualifies as new business. I mean, we're back all in person first time. I'd like to thank some of the directors for coming out tonight, but specifically our new director of planning, or our new old director of planning, Mr. Ramuno, is back. So welcome. Thank you.
New business?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did forget. Thank you for bringing up Mr. Ramona. I appreciate that, Councillor Thompson. He's probably upset that I didn't bring him up, but it's all right. Just wanted to let everyone know we did raise, obviously, if everyone's aware, we did raise the Ukrainian flag at the town hall. We did remove it, and we have put it and raised it at the town park. And the reason for doing that is because we do have flags that go up on occasion, as we did have World Down Syndrome Day flag go up the other day. And so instead of it going up and down, we figured it would be best if we keep it up in support at the town park. It's somewhere where it can stay up continuously as we have other dates that come forward with other flags. So just wanted to let everyone here and the public know that the Ukrainian flag is raised at the town park.
Thank you. Any other new business? Public service announcements. Why don't we start at this side? Councillor Gillen? No. Okay, Councillor, we'll come back. Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now I'd like to thank the resident, Lauren Hanna, who came up with the idea to walk and just to have people gather and share a sense of community and the spirit of being free to do so. And it was, within 3 days. Again, I have to thank staff again, the communications team that put it out there, and council. Thank you for sharing that with your social media. And also just to Lauren herself, a new mom, had a little baby 6 months ago, and just really loves this town, loves this community, and felt that there was an opportunity where so many people wanted to share in, their support of what's happening, and actually not support, but support of the people of Ukraine, and hope that peace prevails. And so that was really lovely, and just great that she sent a message and said to thank you to all council and mayor and everyone else, staff, and how wonderful it was to work with the town. And she felt she could really make a difference in Aurora. And she is now another resident who wants to get engaged and make some differences for us. So thanks to her for having that opportunity. It was fantastic. Just a favor. No, that's enough for me. Thank you. I'll talk to staff after.
Thank you. Councillor Kim? No. Mayor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, just a couple. everyone's favorite topic, obviously winter parking restrictions. And while it might be the warmer weather might be coming and the snow's not necessarily out there, the winter parking restrictions do remain in effect until April 15th. So during this time, please do not park on the road between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Also, just to let everyone know that there's over a week left to nominate someone for the 2022 Community Recognition Awards. Please, if you know someone, and also my plea to council as well. We all know people in our community that have done tremendous volunteer work. If we can nominate them, I would actually put it out there and challenge each of you to nominate at least one person in one of the categories, if you could. And we all know spring is around the corner, so explore various spring-themed outdoor and interactive activities like planting your own spring flower, an interactive walking trail featuring fish for eggs, plus much more during this year's Hello Spring event on Saturday, April 16th, 2022 at the Aurora Senior Center. And for more information, you can visit aurora.ca Hello Spring. And to finish off, as we all know, Ontario has lifted the mask mandate in most settings, except for public transit, healthcare settings, long-term care homes, and congregate settings. Masking is now optional for visitors at all town facilities. And while it is no longer a legal requirement, I think it's important for us to be kind, considerate, and respectful towards everyone, regardless of whether or not they choose to wear a mask. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson? No. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is Nowruz, which is a time of renewal and hope, and it marks the spring. And generally it does come with the spring equinox, and it's generally around the 20th or the 21st of March. So it's a time for many in the world to celebrate spring. We missed World Water Day, a very important day as water is so important to everyone's life and well-being. And also it is Endometriosis Month. There's not a lot of knowledge about this disease, but it does affect about 10% of women. And it's a terrible, terrible disease, very painful and destructive to the body. And I'm very pleased to say that after waiting for 2 years, my daughter will finally have her fourth surgery, and I'm certainly hoping it's her last. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't prepared earlier. As always, I always like to mention the Aurora Cultural Center and how they've got some amazing in-person sessions for art and performances. And I'm so happy that we're able to have that one-on-one experience through arts and culture. The second thing was, and I don't have all the details, but I kind of wanted to throw it out there that we are going to be working with the Arboretum about the invasive species and garlic mustard. There's going to be some pull days in the spring, and hopefully we can coincide with the Aurora Cleanup Day. And I know that that's going to be around the corner as well. But I just wanted to let people know that the town is active in trying to promote and educate the public on what these invasive species look like, and also information on the upcoming LDD season that we're all trying to get prepared for with the egg masses, and then going forward trying to, I guess, mitigate an infestation like last year. I know we've had a few residents emailing us about what we're doing, and definitely can go on our website at aurora.ca. I think it's /LDD, or just search in the search bar LDD, and you'll see all the stuff there, which is great. And as well as buckthorn and all sorts of stuff. Anyways, I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Thank you. I just have two quick ones. I know it was already mentioned, but I did want to read this. Yesterday was the World Down Syndrome Day. World Down Syndrome Day is marked each year on March 21st, beginning in 2006. The 21st day of March, the third month of the year, was selected to signify the uniqueness of the triplication of the 21st chromosome, which causes Down syndrome. Every year on March 21st, Down Syndrome Day is observed to create awareness about Down syndrome. It is the condition in which a child is born with an extra 21st chromosome. And anyone who knows someone, a child with Down syndrome, knows how special they are. Yesterday was also International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And was guided by the International Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. The International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination recognizes the injustices and prejudices fueled by racial discrimination takes place on every day. Observed annually on March 21st, it commemorates the day police in Sharpeville, South Africa, opened fire and killed 69 people at a peaceful demonstration against apartheid. In Canada, this day is an opportunity to reflect on the fact that while progress has been made, Indigenous people, racialized communities, and religious minorities in Canada continue to face racism and discrimination every year. It is also a day to recommit our efforts to combat all forms of racial discrimination, injustice, systematic racism, and hate, to ensure a world where everyone is respected, safe, and has equitable access to contribute meaningful to all aspects of society. That was yesterday. Any other public service announcements? Seeing none, we have no closed session. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gilliland, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you for making it easy for me.